Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today we're going to spend some time together and learn how we can draw better birds. We're going to do two different type of birds, and one is flying, one instead is like just standing, so you have a couple of alternatives, and I would say that the level of difficulty is more or less the same. I'm going to use a pencil for drawing, white piece of paper, and markers, but you can also use a coloring pencil if you prefer to do so. Also, I need to use different type of grays, or better say shades of gray, someone darker, someone lighter. And if you do not have many grays available for this exercise, you can definitely change the color palette into something that you feel more connected to and what you have available. Or you can use your color, your like drawing pencil to shade on top of the markers and the gray to make it look like lighter or darker. Or you can do the whole exercise just using a drawing pencil and learn a little bit more about value and shading. These videos are perfect for students, homeschool students, and for whoever wants to learn how to draw better and build a better drawing foundations that will allow you to do more complicated designs and create beautiful artwork and maybe express your creativity even better because you have the skills to do so. As every practice, friends, remember that is an exercise. So sometimes we get it right at the first try. Sometimes we need to do several tries. It is totally fine. This is how we learn. And remember that drawing, we study art and drawing, not because we want to become a Leonardo da Vinci or all great artists. Some of us do, and will, in fact, but the majority of us practice art like you practice sport because it's very beneficial for our mental, emotional, and physical health. We cannot forget and we cannot weaken our skills, such as fine motor skills and brain hand coordination skills. These are important, and we are risking to losing those skills because this is a very technological society, and kids and everybody is exposed to a different set of skills now. That is, of course, they are important and we need to learn them, but we should never forget the other ones. So I'm gonna switch the camera and we can start this beautiful practice together. Okay, friends, this is my paper, and here we go. Space for bird number 1 and space for bird number 2. We're gonna learn how to use geometric shape to build our structure. So I'm gonna go super light with the pencil. Please try not to add pressure. The first little shape that we need is a sort of a circle. And we're gonna do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as you notice, I really use several like dynamic lines and I do not press hard on the paper. Please try to do the same. Now we're gonna do a big upside down drop that is connected a little bit with this with the circle that we did before. So we have a circle and we have this beautiful upside down water drop. Now we are gonna add the shape of the tail that we will turn into the tail of the bird. And you can do it like this already, or we can start to create already some nice texture at the bottom. Now we are going to set the space and the size of our wings. So we're gonna do a gentle and super light line on the left, and then we go down and we do the same on the right. Okay, and then because we want to have more or less the same size, we're gonna kind of come down with a super light line that arrives more or less when our drop meet the tail. One side. You see, I'm using dynamic lines, so I bring my line down little by little, and I do not press at all. So this is the structure of a bird. So now we're gonna work on these structures and add details and reshape the figure of our bird. We're gonna start by adding the beak. We are going to then rework. Look at I'm doing it just with tiny little line. I'm reworking the shape of the head. We're gonna create a nice continuous neck over here. So this one we're gonna erase after. We're going to maybe puff the body a little more. And here we are going to do kind of a tiny little oval that will represent the paw of the bird. So with your eraser, you can start to eliminate lines that you don't need anymore. And let's proceed to this other side. Gently, we reshape way better, so it looks way more natural. And we are going to complete the beak, right? We can erase the line if it bothers us. And if you learn how to be kind of light with your pressure of the pencil, you're gonna do way better. You can always erase. Now let's start to shape these wings a little more naturally, right? One side and the other side. You create a little bit like, you know, like a little shoulders here. And then let's do some nice texture. They don't have to look exactly the same. Remember, we are representing feather, right? And of course, they are symmetrical in patterns and color, but they are not perfectly the same. It's like for human body, right? We always have some differences between one side and another. And now we go with the longer feathers. So this time we're gonna go up and round up. We're gonna go the same line and round. We're gonna follow this, the direction and the size that we prep for us. So we are sure that at the end, we're gonna have more or less the same size of wings. Sorry, I forgot an S. Little by little, they become a little smaller and smaller and smaller until we attach them to the body. You're gonna go back on top of those wings, feathers, sorry, and we can add some nice texture with the pencil. And here as well, we can multiply the texture with this tiny little scribble, right? So we have some nice implied texture, which we say several times is basically the optical illusion of the natural real texture. Then we're gonna do the same over here. You go up, around, and then you start the second one, up and around. So, as you notice, using geometric shapes, very basic, is extremely helpful because it helps us to shape and size our object, or in this case, our bird. And at the same time, it guides us to have a nice kind of symmetric design, but also you learn something extremely important, that things that do not happen just with the first outline. Of course, when you are very, very young and you're learning, that is the way that you will do. But then little by little, when you start to learn more, let's keep adding texture and differentiation in feathers, you really want to use a multiple type of lines, right? So here we're going to do some nice texture, tiny little strokes with a pencil that then if you want you can amplify, means that you can do more. And now let's place our eye. And because it could be a generic bird, but it was specifically inspired by the loggerhead shrike or the musket bird, that they have this beautiful, they are gray and black, and they have this tiny pretty black mask around their eyes. Now with my eraser, I'm gonna eliminate the lines that I don't want and that I don't need anymore. And we are going to do the coloring of this bird before switching to the other ones, just because the other one is instead inspired by a cardinal and is standing, and we're gonna use completely different color palette. So proceed to use the lightest gray that you can possibly find. This is a light, slightly bluish gray. And as I say, my friends, just even with markers, I am not pressuring hard. There is really no pressure in my hand. I'm just like working with tiny, tiny little strokes, because in this case, I would like to see some nice texture. Otherwise, I would do the other technique of lines, you know, to make it look more like smooth, but in this case I really want to embrace this little texture, right? And so I want to show tiny little strokes. Also, it is beautiful the effect that the markers has on top of the pencil that I used before to create already a little bit of texture. And you proceed, fill all the gaps. And then we're gonna go down, we're gonna do the tail with the same gray, but then we are going to go over also with a darker gray. And as I told you in the presentation, if you do not have many grays, many shades available, you will make your own, right? By going back with a drawing pencil and blend it and shade it to make it look as dark as you want and as dark as you need. Now let's go and switch the gray with something just slightly warmer and darker. And here too, I really love the fact that the pencil is blending with the marker. And I'm proceeding with the same tiny little strokes. So we're not doing long strokes, but we go tiny. So you can recreate a little texture also with markers. If you're using coloring pencil, you will still proceed with tiny little strokes. Maybe you can press a little harder on the surface because the nature of the coloring pencil, they will allow you to do so, and they look nice and vibrant, right? With the same gray, I'm gonna kind of go over and make sure that I dark up a little bit the tail. And I create a beautiful connection also with the colors. If you're not using gray and are using any color that you want, just be aware that, you know, you want the colors to be cohesive at the end. And now we're gonna go with the darker gray. Let me see if this one, yes, it's probably dark enough. I don't want it too dark. I'm gonna go gently on top of the feather. And now, you know, when you have to do a landscape and you want to include animals, or you want to include a bird, or maybe you really need to draw a bird for a specific project, or because you just love them, right? You can have a journal when you try to draw different type of birds, and there are so many. So it could be an amazing exercise and also an exploration, because you can research the quality and the characteristic of that specific birds that you're drawing. Now that you know how to use geometric shapes to create the structures and the position, right? The pose that you want your birds to hold, you will be able to do way better. I'm gonna scribble it a little bit here so we have a nice connection, and then I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna finish this wing. So even people and students that I hear all the time saying, I'm not good at drawing and all, just remember, it is a matter of knowledge, right? When we acknowledge the right techniques and what to use and how to use it, what to do first and what to do last, right? And how can we fix some mistake? How can we shape the bird in this case, but other animal or object that we want to, you will notice a huge improvement. And then there will be also the very talented. So you see, I'm going over with one more layer of markers, and remember that we learned that if you go over, you increase the value. I'm gonna go over here also, and just slightly here on top of some of the strokes that I did at the very beginning with the pencil. I'm gonna also do some nice strokes here, just not to make it look too flat, right? To recreate the beautiful optical illusion of feather and texture. And I'm really obsessed with texture. I just love them. Now we're gonna switch to a black. You can use the Sharpies that I'm gonna use also for some outline, or you can use a black markers with a pretty thin point. Anyway, we are going to do this eye black. The beak in this bird is also black. It's pretty dark. And then we have the mask that it's also black. Now with the Sharpie, you can go very nicely around the bird. We are gonna use this type of dynamic line because we don't want the outline in this case to be too perfect, right? We want the outlines to embrace the nature of our subject, and is a really soft and fluffy and feathery. So we can use the Sharpie just to add a few nice texture here and there. It's like a barely touching the paper. It's like pretending that you need to scratch something out of the paper. Gonna do the same on our wing. And if you're using coloring pencil, you don't need to do outlines if you don't want to. And actually, like for this practice, it might be even better coloring pencil just because they will make your bird look even more realistic. But just tiny little, very scribbling lines, not too perfect, right? Randomly placed on the wings, and then we go super gently and we kind of re-go over the lines that we did with the pencil. But as you notice, you don't have to be perfect. It's just like an approximation of the outline, but it will look pretty natural. And then always with the Sharpie, we can go over the lines that we did with pencil. Not all of them. You can do more, you can do less. Let's not forget the outline over here. Then I grab the darkest of my gray. I'm gonna do there are a few little gaps that I, on purpose, I'm gonna go over just a little bit. And here I'm going to have my tail a little darker, mostly the tip. The tips of the tail, I want it to be darker. I'm gonna grab my pencil. I'm going to shade, blend a little bit more. I'm going to create just a slightly little opportunity to blend, and then I just with my finger and voila, bird number 1 all done. Now let's move to bird number 2, and it's inspired by the cardinal. When I lived in North Carolina, there were cardinals everywhere and I really love it. Now we are going to set nice geometric shapes exactly as we did for the first one. We just set them in a different position, okay? So we're gonna start with a circle. We're gonna start with this type of, remember the drop. This time though, we're gonna make it more on the side, and we don't make them overlap, but they just touch each other. And we're gonna make this drop pretty big and kind of, on a side and coming all the way. Now from here, we're gonna double the same type of line. Proceed with very dynamic lines, and we're gonna close it here, and then we're gonna kind of create a sort of a long, the same type of shape that we use for the tail, and we can close it like that, okay? So you have the generic size and proportion. Now let's work on those proportion. So we're gonna start to add the beak. Cardinal has a pretty short beak. Then look what I do here, because we need to create a little crest that is typical of cardinal. We're gonna go straight up, and then we're gonna use a zigzag very like a scribbling zigzag, and we are going to go down with the same type of line. Zigzag, zigzag. We can close the beak. You can already start to do the detail inside if you want. And now we're gonna shape the rest of the body. From here, we go all the way. So you see, we are following the direction of the geometric shape, but we just go around and better, right? With the same type of nice dynamic line, we're gonna do a very, very puffy body. Cardinals are very puffy. They're really, really cute. They have a lot of feather. They live in cold weather, so they really need to be protected, right? And now we're gonna start to shape the wings. So we're gonna reshape it a little better. And we are going to start to shape some of the feather. And here, straight up a little bit. Instead to do that curve, we're gonna straight it up. Now you can start, if you want, to erase the lines if they bother you. And the secret to be able to successfully do this exercise is not to press hard at all. Otherwise, you won't be able to erase them. And even when you erase them, you will see them underneath. We are going to do the tail. So we're gonna connect. And we are going to do the feather. A little irregular, like typical of cardinal. And then now, because we say that we are gonna do our bird standing, we are going to add the legs, 1 and 2, and then we can just do something like that, pretending that maybe standing on a branch, right? Let's pretend that this would be like that. Now let's go for the eyes. We're gonna place the eye here, and the cardinal also has this beautiful black mask that go more or less like this, okay? So all of this part will be black. The rest we're gonna do red, and we're gonna do some gray. I'm gonna just erase the lines in the wings, and then we are ready to color. So we're gonna start by coloring our beautiful cardinal with this really bright, intense red. They are really red. So look what I do. I kind of repeat the same type of line that I did with my pencil. I'm gonna go over, and then we color. Because, as I say, I want to see some of the texture that the strokes of the markers will give me, I'm going to color with these tiny, tiny little strokes, because this is the technique that I think is the best for this type of drawing. Otherwise, you know, in other occasion we did something like that, right? Which is very precise, it's just very flat. So today, because we want to have a little bit of texture, you're allowed to do shorter strokes and maybe even change a little bit the direction of these strokes, like that. And I know the markers squiggle a little bit on the paper. Hopefully it's not too bad. I'm gonna switch the tip because I feel that this side was kind of getting a little dry. So I'm gonna give it a break. And the beautiful things when we have dual tip markers that you can keep going because you have another tip. This one is thick, so I need to kind of make sure that I know how to position the tip, because otherwise you risk to go outside of the space that you really need to. And I use the same type of nice, you know, technique with short strokes in a different direction. A super, super tiny gaps, but very little and a few. We're gonna go around this, and then we're gonna go down to our tail. We're gonna work on top of the red because the whole bird is basically red except for the mask. And the beak usually is red-orange, so you can use the same red that you're using for the body. Let's make sure that we don't forget any details, and we do the same on the wing. Don't worry, because you will still be able to see the pencil underneath, so you're not gonna lose details. And when we work with the gray on top of the red, we're gonna start to differentiate the different parts, such as the wings and the tail from the body, okay? So just gonna do like that, very patiently, until we finish our beautiful, beautiful cardinal. Go back, fill all the gaps. Now we can go over with the red if you want to intensify the red. And make it even more saturated and bright. You see that you're able to see the pencil lines, right? Beautiful. Now let's work with the gray on top of the red to alter it a little bit. In fact, the red on the tail presents some nice gray as well as the wing. So I'm gonna do a little bit with the light gray marker. And just slightly here on the crest. Let's do a couple of passages on the... Now we're gonna do with the Sharpie, we are going to do black. The small details, we're gonna make them black. Beak, we say that is going to be the same red than the body. If you want to distinguish, it could be maybe a dark orange, but usually it's almost like, yeah, I would say dark orange, black. Now I'm going to start to do the outline. So we go over details, and look what I'm doing over here. I'm using this tiny zigzag line, so I don't want my black spot to be perfect, because remember that we want to recreate that softness of the feather. We kind of lose the eyes almost in these two birds, just because, you know, it's black on black, but it is what it is. So now with the same type of nice dynamic lines that we use with the pencil and that we use for our first bird, you're gonna go, you see, and kind of scribble this outline. So don't use this type of line. Look what I do over here. Don't do this on the bird. Just use these tiny little dynamic lines. Do not pressure at all on the paper and on your markers. Leave your hand loose like that. We're reshaping a little bit our wings just to make sure that we can see. And with the same black, if you want to dark up the tip of the feather, it's beautiful, do so, and it's very accurate. Then we're gonna do the outline of our bird's belly. And even here, if you want to add some nice strokes, pretend that you're scratching gently on top of the paper. They will add a little more dramaticity to your drawing, right? And recreate this optical illusion of feather. And now we go down to the tail, shape the feather, and then add the texture. We can dark up the tip, it's always by using these very dynamic lines. And then we can do the same over here, super light. And then if you want to finish with a nice touch, you can also take care of the branch. So in this case, we go back to a more traditional way of outlining just by following the line that we traced before with the pencil. You can always add some nice texture with the black. And then you can grab a brown or a green or whatever color you have available and color the branch as well. I'm gonna stop here so we focus on the practice of the birds. So now we have this loggerhead shrike or masked bird and the cardinal. One is flying, one is standing, and we learn how to use pencil and markers in very dynamic lines and how to use simple geometric shapes such as the drop, such as the circle, right? Sort of a triangle to create the structure of a bird. I hope you have fun and I hope you find this practice useful. See you at the next one.